For the next 4 weeks, folks, we shall have Gospels centred around Jesus' favourite topic, the reign of God. And 3 of those Gospels are parables. We know that Jesus would have been a great advertising person, wouldn't he? He tells stories so well. We know the parable as soon as it begins to be proclaimed. This weekend we have one of the most controversial parables. You'd say to me, but parables are always turning things upside down. They're always controversial and asking us questions. That's true, but I think today's is the doozy of them all. And yet, I think that it's a terrific gospel. Will you let me try to persuade you? Scholars Amy Jill Levine, the Jewish New Testament scholar, and our own guru Brendan Byrne, both say that the title Labourers in the Vineyard doesn't help this particular gospel. They recommend, both of them, each of them recommends Generous Landowner or Surprising Salaries would be far better. Titles, you see, focus on one aspect of the story and cover up the importance of other parts of the story. But if our focus is on the labourers in the vineyard, then yes, it's not fair. We have one group who slave all day in the hot sun, and the last group, the Johnny-come-latelys, just spend an hour in the cool of the evening and they get the same pay. Of course it's not fair. But lots of things in life are not fair, don't you think? It's not fair that last century's flu epidemic people didn't have Netflix or Zoom or Google. It's not fair that some children are born with spina bifida, that some are orphans, that some people, 30-year-olds, have MS, etc., etc. Fill in your own "it's not fair." There are plenty of them, aren't there? So back to this particular parable. What's it about? Well, it's about salvation. Yeah, it's about salvation. It's about the reign of God. Do remember, please, that Jesus began his public ministry proclaiming the kingdom of God is close at hand. So this parable could indeed be about love of neighbour. Salvation right here, right now, in 2020. The Gospel says that the landowner paid each 1 denarius. 1 denarius, we are told, is the equivalent to a day's wage, and it feeds a family 3 to 6 meals. So about enough for a day. So this parable could indeed be about paying a minimum daily wage. Think about hospitality people of any sort. Think about the supermarket stackers. Think about numerous other people who have been underpaid and who have been highlighted over the last months and years. The reign of God cannot come while there's poverty and hunger. But what if the gospel is about heaven? Well, I think we can still say it's not fair, because other people who throughout their lives have been criminally selfish, do they get into heaven just as automatically as as people like yourselves who have prayed each day, gone to Mass regularly, worked hard to make sure that your children had a proper education, etc., etc. And yet, strangely enough, thinking about all that gives me comfort on a couple of levels. How come, you might well ask? Well, do you remember a few months ago the parable of the sower who went out and sowed the seed? He threw it willy-nilly all over the place, onto concrete and onto rocks, as well as good soil. In the same way, I'm in favour of a God who is over the top in generosity, rather than a bookkeeper God who takes note, weighs up all our misdeeds and the few little bits of selflessness that we do. The Good Samaritan, the prodigal father, all those many, many stories of Jesus point to a generous God who is hell-bent on trying to make sure that all of creation reaches fulfilment. This is the sort of God that I want in my corner. What about you? Now have I convinced you that this is a pretty good parable? Well, finally, please think about what gives you deepest satisfaction. What gives you the deepest satisfaction? Now are you convinced? Thank you.